let's move on over then to Utah. Let's go over there. Now, we were just talking about Texas Tech and how they were dealing with injuries at the quarterback position. The injuries at the quarterback position for Utah were, I mean, catastrophic. And they won 8 games last year. They won 8 games last year. In the
In a
year where the,
brutal
the
schedule.
Pac-12, where the Pac-12 was at its best.
Hmm.
At its best. So I don't know. In my opinion, I think this offense, of course, is going to take drastic improvements just because you have Cam Rising back. Not that he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Not that he's even the best quarterback in the Big 12. I'll say that with confidence.
Yeah.
But Cam Rising is a good quarterback. And that's all Utah needs. That is all they need in order to improve from only scoring 22 and a half points per game, right? To only passing for 163 yards per game, which is bottom 15 in the country. They only attempted 25 passes per game, which was in the bottom 20 as well. Um, a completion percentage of 57%. I mean, what? This passing attack last year with Bryson Barnes and Nate Johnson was terrible. Was terrible. And I look at the weapons on this team and I'm like, you know what? There might be some guys that can catch some passes from Cam Rising this year. I really believe
Yeah.
that.
I mean, you lose Devon Vele, right? And you lose Sione Vaki and Jaquin Jackson in that running back room. But yeah, like you said, I think the aggregate, you get some guys back healthy from a year ago. Not only Cam Rising, but also um Brent Kuthi, right? Brent Kuth. He battled injuries, I know that.
Yeah.
But then
He didn't
you
play
bring
last
in
year.
no, and he's one of the better tight ends in the Big 12. You bring in Dorian Singer from USC slash Arizona. He's a guy that was, maybe not quite live up to the hype that was last year at USC, but he sounds like he's having a great spring, or he had a great spring, and he's going to be a real weapon for this offense. And Cam Rising, you also have Micah Pittman coming back, Mooney Parks that were solid, and I think those guys will take steps with more consistent quarterback play as well, right? And then Trayshawn Lyons and Damien Alford are also coming in as transfers. So you got some depth there in the wide receiver room, running back room, right? I like Michael Bernard, I like Jalen Gulliver. Anthony Woods is a fun player. He's coming from Idaho. Obviously a step down or step up for him in competition, coming from the Big Sky, but he had 1,100 yards last year. Can do some fun things with him. And yeah, just for Cam Rising, I just hope his mobility comes back because that was an underrated and like really, fun part of his game, but also dynamic part of his game to extend plays. And we'll see how. I mean, the injury, I know it was a serious injury, but it sounded like it took a while. There might have been a setback. So I hope he has the confidence and the actual physical capability to be as mobile as he was pre-injury.
Well, I also think the quarterback room itself is just better, right? Like Brandon Rose, right, was injured last year. He would have been the backup quarterback, but he got hurt, right? And then you were left with Bryson Barnes and Nate Johnson. So he's back. Also, Sam Heward,
Name
sneaky
drop, former five-star
name.
recruit.
Exactly. Over there at Washington, he transferred to Cal Poly. Um, he did okay at Cal Poly. He did okay. Not saying he was a world beater, but now he's over there at Utah. And look, I don't think he's got to do much. I don't think he's got to be able to throw the ball accurately, which,
Yeah.
other other players, other quarterbacks on that team last year were not able to do well. So
Yeah,
what's
no,
crazy is that Bryson Barnes and Nate Johnson they're both going to compete for a starting job at their respective schools. I don't think either of them will get it, which is crazy. Um, Bryson Barnes is going to back up Spencer Petras next year.
jeez. And at that's exact Utah fans, you know how to struggle, man. It was tough last year. Even Nate Johnson too. I mean, he just what was he doing? I mean, offensively, throwing the football. Regardless, so yeah, you said the whole room in general, completely overhauled and significantly better in terms of guys come back from injury as well. on the O-line last year, you struggled, right? A little bit more than I think Utah fans were expecting. And that's the expectation that they've set. Utah typically has a really good O-line, and that's credit to their recruiting, their development and coaching and scheme and all that good stuff. What I believe you lose three starters last year, right? Or maybe yeah, so you
Um,
got Caleb
two
Lamu.
starters for sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry, three stars coming back. That's thank you. Yeah, Keaton Bills and um Sateo Laume. If I botched that, I'm so sorry. But yeah, Caleb
Lamea,
Lamu,
yeah.
that staff is excited about. I know he's a young kid. On the other side, the other tackle is Spencer Fano. He was a guy that was pretty exciting. We were talking about him this time last year as winning the job as a true freshman for Utah and how impressive that was. I still like his potential. Now, did he struggle a little bit last year? Yeah, maybe, but also it was a true freshman, and that's to be expected. Um, and yeah, you got Michael Moko Fizi. He's pretty good. Tenoa Togaye. I'm sorry, I'm so butchering these, but regard he needs to be a little bit more consistent. And then you got probably Johnny Maya at center. But regardless, though, I think you're thinking that the O line is going to take a step. And if you ask me which position I probably feel least confident about on this offense, it's probably the O line. But I still think the floor on the O line is pretty good and pretty solid, which tells me, how much we feel pretty good about this Utah team.
Yeah, I think this offense can be fine. And if it's marginally better than last year, right? If it was marginally better at the time last year, I mean, they would have had a chance to win like 9 or 10 games. But alas, it was not that much better. But if this offense takes an improvement and goes from from a bottom, I guess, 30, bottom 35 offense, if they can improve to become a top 60, top 50 offense, now we're talking about a really special team because I look over at the defensive side of the ball and I feel really good about what they have, especially on the front seven. I mean, I'm just seeing piece after piece after piece after piece. And to boot, you get Paul Fitzgerald, the transfer from Utah State, who had 7 sacks last year. I just think Morgan Scalley has done a fantastic job with this Utah defense, and I think it will be as good as it was last year, which was, by the way, a top, I don't know, 15, top 20 defense for sure last year. You know, I guess their secondary struggled at times, but their front seven was nuts last year, and it is still good this year.
Yeah, I mean, you lose Jonah Ellis, you're going to miss him right off the NFL. But the reality is, last year your defense was so good, and even so, they were also, put in just brutal spots by your offense. Always on the field, really struggling to like knowing that you cannot let teams score. You have to keep this game low scoring. That margin of error that they played with was pretty small, and it was just really, really impressive how they handled it. And obviously all the pieces come back. That's got to excite you. But and also the complementary football that you're going to be seeing here with your offense taking a step, hopefully, and your defense returning guys. I mean, it's nice. I think we were robbed last year. This Utah defense was good enough to make some real noise in the Pac-12 last year. Even so, you had Oregon and Washington. Now, I'm not going to say they were going to win those games, but healthy Cam Rising, right, a competent offense, I think you would have seen a much more competitive team at the top end of the Pac-12 last year, which speaks to the potential of this Utah team this year.
They had some injuries too. I mean, Lander Barton got hurt last year, about the midway point of the season, week 8, something like that against USC. He comes back in the offense or that linebacking room. Reed comes back in that linebacking room. I mean, that linebacking core looks very nice. The Mooney got some good snaps last year as a result of um, some injury. Look, this is a good linebacking core, a good defensive line. Now, I think the question comes in the secondary a little bit, right? However, we've seen teams with really elite front sevens be able to hide their secondary a little bit. I mean, I look at UCLA last year. I mean, I guess kind of Utah last year, but they had some good players in the secondary as well. Like Cole Bishop was pretty awesome. Vaki was a good defender as well. You had some pieces there in the secondary. So I look at the secondary, CD, and I still might be okay with it. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more wait and see in terms of like the known commodities that are in your front seven. But I like Zamaya Vaughn. I mean, he's
Yes.
returning for you. That's a good piece to have. He had over 600 snaps, graded out well for you at cornerback position. You've got a couple of transfers coming in to fight for that job opposite him, right? Keenan Johnson from Georgia State, right? We love our Sun Belt guys. He's a good athlete. And then Cameron Calhoun, former high recruit from Michigan. Um, I think he's pretty darn good. He's a former track guy. He was buried in the depth chart there at Michigan behind a really, really good secondary last year. We know how good it was. And it's just not doesn't mean he's a bad player, it just means he was, the young kid in an extremely loaded room. So he transfers, find some more playing time in Utah. I don't know if he'll start right away, but I do think he can be a nice contributing piece, especially if injuries set in, which Utah fans crossing their fingers they don't, right? Hopefully not. But the reality is through this 12 game season in the Big 12, you're gonna have injury set in. And Elijah Davis is also in that room. I kind of like that. I like listen, you said there's a lot of question marks, right? In terms of like proven production at the Big 12 level, or I guess, the Pac 12 level, but for Utah, right? In the system. So we'll see. But I think the pieces are there. And obviously, you trust that staff, right? I mean, Morgan Scalley is one of the best there is defensively, and they've been doing that for so long, and I've had productive teams for a while now.
Yeah, all these guys really, except Calhoun, like have some sort of playing experience, right? In at college football. So I do think sure they might some of these players might not have as much experience starting in this system, but I think they could definitely get there as a secondary. I'm expecting this to be a top 15 defense in the country next year. I really am. So, and if that happens and that offense makes improvements, I mean, you could argue Utah was better than a top 15 team defensively last year, but they were one of the best teams in the country defensively last year. But I I really do think that this team with this schedule, which I'm about to run down, I think they should win double digit games. Like their win total's at 9.5. I'm gonna go the over, right? They play Southern Utah at home week 1, win Baylor at home week 2, which again is not a conference game. If you remember that. At home, you win that game. Utah State on the road, you're gonna win that game. But Oklahoma State on the road, which might not necessarily win that game, but uh could be a good matchup. Arizona, excuse me, at home the week after that, then a bye, then Arizona State, which I like you winning that game. TCU at home, I like you winning that game. Houston on the road, I like you winning that game. Bye, BYU at home, winning. I like you winning that game. I like you winning at Colorado. Iowa State, you get them at home, and UCF, you go on the road. I mean, we talked about this. I mean, this is one of the easier schedules in the Big 12, right? I mean, they kind of got some scheduling favors getting in here in the new conference. You don't have to play Kansas State. Um, Now you don't draw Cincinnati, but you draw BYU, you draw Houston, you draw Arizona State, and then Baylor, you get them as an out of conference game. Like that's your premier out of conference game. So I really like their schedule, and I do believe that this Utah win team will win double digit games this year.
Yeah, I want to make a correction real quick. I was talking about Keenan Johnson, and I said Georgia State. It's actually Georgia Tech. I'm sorry about that. He graded out really well for Georgia Tech last year. Was one of their better players in that secondary. Um, so sorry about that. But yes, about their schedule, we did a video about it, right? Talking about how they probably have one of the easiest, if not, we think the easiest schedule in the Big 12. And I think it's shown in that win total. But it's interesting at 9.5, right? How many teams are going to be favored in every single game that they play in and only have a win total of 9.5, right? I think that's pretty interesting, right? And so I know it's going to be tough, and I know there's a lot of parity in the Big 12, and we'll see. But I think this team, I feel pretty good enough about the depth here and the talent that they're bringing back that to feel good about hitting the over on it. I'm not talking about betting it, like we said, but I feel pretty good that 10, 11, 12 wins are absolutely on the docket for this Utah team. It's not Big 12 championship or bust, but I think the expectation is that it's theirs to win, right? And it's shown in the odds, it's shown in the win total, and I think it's for good reason.